within. BFF, we rise above, stronger together, we shine with love. Faith unshaken, hearts on fire, fearless souls, we're reaching high.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the BFF Empowerment Podcast. I am your host, Blaque Diamond, and today, this episode is all about children and just celebrating the different things that are celebrated in the month of April in regards to children. So this is going to be a two-part episode. So, just a trigger warning for those of you who may be survivors of child abuse that this episode will be talking about my personal experiences with being a child that was abused. So, some of the things I may discuss, you may not want to listen to, and that's perfectly fine. And then the second part of my episode is going to be talking about autism in children. So, before we jump into what the episode is going to be about, let's go ahead and do our midweek check in.
What's going on? What's happening? Time for the midweek check-in. What's going on? What's happening? Time for the midweek check-in.
All right, everyone. So I hope you have been having a good day so far, a good week. I hope everyone has been being kind to you. What have I been up to since, we last met? Let's see. So basically, definitely been busy with pageant related things. We are in our recruitment season right now, so I've been talking to interested candidates, people who want to know more about pageantry and how to get involved and, just what it all entails and sharing my personal journey and my personal experience with being a part of my first pageant in October of 2025. I am Miss Altruistic 2025 by way of the Miss Blind Diva Empowerment Pageant, by way of the Eyes Like Mine Incorporated foundation and organization. So it is a very, well-meaning organization. It is the first pageant that is specifically for blind and visually impaired women in the US. So, for those of you who are interested or curious, want to know more about how to join, you definitely can reach out to me at bjohnson at eyeslikemine.org. You can also hit me up through the podcast email address at bffempowerment at gmail.com. If you're interested in, being a candidate, going from a applicant to a candidate to a possible title holder, all of that information is available on the eyeslikemine.org website. That's where you apply to become a contestant in the pageant. So outside of that, I had the opportunity of volunteering with the United Way chapter of Greensboro, putting together enrichment bags for kids with books and, just different tools that they can use during the summer so that they can still continue to learn so that there's no gap in their education with being home for 2 months on summer break. So that was a great experience. Got to represent myself as Miss Altruistic 2025, took good pictures, got to just kind of let people know about who I am and what I have going on and why I do what I do. So my title of Miss Altruistic is definitely all about the community and community service. So made some good connections that I hope will, build some long-lasting collaborations and opportunities to do more with my local community here in Greensboro where I live. So outside of that, I've been working, working a lot, working hard, working a lot of overtime, getting prepared to fly back to New Jersey at the end of the month to attend our homecoming as title holders of the Eyes Like Mine organization. So we will be doing our photo shoot, PSA for the city of Newark, New Jersey, and then also participating on a panel during the Marvelous Mothers baby shower, community baby shower that we will be participating in. So any of you listening who are in the Newark, New Jersey area, May 1st, I'm sorry, May 2nd is the Marvelous Moms community baby shower. So come out, get all some good info, some good insights, and also some things that you may need for being a mom. We're looking forward to meeting everyone and just having that good camaraderie and community and helping out. So I hope you guys enjoyed getting to hear a little bit about what I've been up to. All right, guys. So, like I said, this episode may be a little bit touching for some of you who are survivors of child abuse. April is Child Abuse Awareness Month. If you know a child who is in need, who is in danger, who, needs some support, who may not be brave enough to reach out and tell somebody about what's going on in their house. So please, please, if you see something, say something. Even if it may seem very little, if they may come, to school just not looking like they're being nourished, or just look, you don't want to just falsely, or just make something out of nothing. But definitely, if you see any signs of a child being neglected or abused, please say something, because you don't know what a child may be going through, and they may not have that willpower, or that, just knowing that anyone is listening. With my own personal situation, I was abused from the time I was born until 15 years old, when, due to that child abuse, I became blind. That's the only reason why the child abuse stopped, is because me becoming disabled, me becoming blind, was like a telltale sign. CPS had been involved, a couple of times throughout my life, but nothing ever happened. My mom knew how to put on the act very well. She knew how to pretend very well. And what's the craziest thing about it is, even though my mom abused my siblings and she always worked in the field with children. She was always working in daycares, working in schools as teachers. She even owned her own daycare at one point. She's always worked in fields related to early childhood development. That's what she got her degree in. So kids have always been what she chose to work with, or who she chose to work with. But when it came to her own children, we were abused. So my mom was a single mom of five children, five different fathers. None of the fathers stuck around. Out of the five children, my brother, my brothers, so my younger brother, my older brother, and myself, we were the ones that were severely abused. My two sisters, they saw and experienced saw what we went through, but they never actually experienced the abuse that we did. And even though they didn't physically go through the things that we went through themselves, them just being in the household and witnessing what we went through also affected them into adulthood as well. But out of all of my mom's children, I was the one that was abused the most severely. Um, and a lot of it was my mom took her resentment about being a single mom out on us, as if we asked to be here, as if we asked for the situation, instead of taking accountability for her actions and her behaviors that led to her being a single mom. She decided that we would be the ones to suffer because of her circumstances. And the things that we went through were severe. I mean, my mom justified what she did as she knew she was hard on us. But it was more than being hard. It wasn't even just discipline, physical discipline, corporal punishment. It was just abuse. It was just torture, being held down in boiling hot water, being made to eat pepper, hot sauce, locked in closets for days on end, not being fed, being made to clean the house in its entirety over and over and over again until it met her satisfaction, not being fed until it was done, being beat with extension cords, cable cords, plastic bats, wooden paddles, beat, stomp, punch, like as if we were grown adults, choked, slammed, on a regular basis for the simplest of things, just because she felt like it. There was no rhyme or reason, and that's what we endured. Being made to sleep on concrete in a garage, that was our bed. Sleeping on the hard floor, being locked in the garage with a porta potty, so we weren't even allowed to go to the bathroom. We had to use the porta potty, and she would let us out once a day to dump the porta potty. It was just so much that we endured as children that we didn't even ask for. And I just could never imagine putting my child through what I went through. And to this day, like sometimes, I talk to my sister. And she said she made the choice not to have children because she was afraid she would become like our mom. Now, she never went through what we went through, but the fact that she witnessed what we went through has made her decide that she doesn't want to be a mom because she's afraid she's going to do the same exact thing that our mom did to us. And it's sad. It's definitely very sad, the fact that a woman is making a decision not to have children because of her childhood, because of what she went through, and seeing, what her siblings went through. She's afraid that she's going to turn into that person. Um, so at one point, I can honestly say that I had that fear as well. I think I was very hesitant when it came to how I decided to discipline my child or things like that because yeah, I held even though I didn't really think much of it or think that I was thinking like that because it was all, subconsciously. Um, but yeah, I held on to that same fear of thinking I would be my mom. So I went out of my way to do the complete opposite of everything that I saw growing up just because I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to basically exemplify everything that I went through because my situation was I became a single mom, not of my own choice, not of my own doing. So I never wanted to resent my situation and take that out on my child because that's what I went through. So I decided to be that cycle breaker, to decide that no matter what circumstances that I find myself in, that I will get through it and I will get through it the right way, not by causing harm to other people who didn't ask for it. So if anyone listening here is a survivor of child abuse, know someone who's been a survivor of child abuse, or those a child right now that is suffering in silence, reach out, like talk to someone, talk to someone on their behalf. Like, just don't do it just because you suspect or anything like that. Like, actually have your facts because you don't want to go around falsely accusing somebody of doing something that they're not doing. But if you have facts and you see the signs, you see the bruises, you see just the treatment of the child, don't hesitate to reach out to someone to get help for that child. I'm an adult now, so I can fend for myself. Children are innocent. They are reliant on the adults that are put in their lives to protect them. So if those are the people that are hurting them, you're not doing them any justice by keeping silent and not saying anything. For the longest time, like I held a lot of resentment towards my own family because they knew what we were going through, and no one stepped in to help us. No one anonymously just called CPS. No one, as adults, we would have conversations and I would talk to my aunts and stuff about some of the things we went through. And, all they would say is, oh, we suspected or we thought, but no one took action. And I even admitted, and I told my aunt, I said, for the longest time, yeah, I really, really resented y'all because I felt like we could have been saved. We could have been, taken out of that living situation. You guys were her sisters. You knew that something was going on, but you guys didn't do anything. You only worried about your own household and what you had going on. So whatever was going on with us was not something that you really cared much about. And I said, all of you had your favorites when it came to my mom's kids. You all could have adopted one of us if you knew or suspected what was going on. And then my aunt, she was like, yeah, you're right. She was like, I wanted to adopt you. I wanted to take you in, but your mom would not let me. And, I was like, but you didn't really try. You didn't fight. You just gave up. It was just like, oh, she said no, so oh well, move on with my life. But in the meantime, I'm a child that's being hurt on a daily basis. And that was it. Like, you didn't really fight to try to really help us. And, I held that resentment, into my adulthood. Eventually, of course, I got over it and all of that. But it was just the fact that we had family. We had people who could have stepped in and did something and didn't. So it takes a village to raise kids. Not necessarily a village that, oh, they have aunts and grandparents and all that you can watch the kid. I mean, it takes a village for people to pay attention to children, pay attention to what they're saying and what they're not saying, pay attention to what they're doing and not doing. Like, there are things that you will see that may seem like it's nothing, but it's that child reaching out for help. They just don't know how to tell you they need help. They're too afraid to say that they need help. I was one of those kids. I was afraid. I knew what we were going through wasn't right. But I was afraid to say anything. I knew what would happen if I did say something because I went to school with kids that I knew were in foster care and, things like that. And just seeing and hearing what they went through, I had to make that decision as a child that what I was going through at home wasn't as bad as what I could possibly go through if I ended up in foster care. So I stayed and made that decision to stay in those situations because that was the lesser of the two evil compared to what could happen to me if I opened my mouth and said something and got taken away and ended up in foster care. And as a child, you should not have to make that decision. You shouldn't have to decide that one abusive household is better than being in, multiple group homes or multiple situations where you're being abused. Like my younger brother, he got so, just messed up about the situation that he became a habitual runaway. So he would run away from home all the time. And finally, the last time when he ran away, he said he did not want to come back to our household. And so he didn't. So he ended up in a group home. He aged out at 18. He was 12 when he finally, got put into the system. And my mom assigned away her parental rights to him. He was raised by the state, in different group homes. But for me, being a girl and just seeing and hearing what other girls that I went to school was going through, I didn't want that for myself. To me, being beat and starved and all of that at home was way worse than being molested or being, raped or sold or, or even being abused by somebody who wasn't even my parent, somebody who was paid to take me in. So I decided that, you know what, I'll just focus on school so I can graduate and then I can leave when I turn 18. That was my whole thing. That was my mindset. That's what I focused on to get myself through everything that I was going through. And of course, writing as well was my therapy. So I used to write poetry and stories because I would kind of just use my imagination to get me mentally out of my reality. I would create stories and stuff with characters that I could live vicariously through them, and that's how I passed my time. I read a lot. Read and wrote and write. And like that's all I did. Reading and writing, reading and writing. To this day, yeah, I love reading and writing. But those were my therapies. Those were my escapes. That's how I got through it all. And unfortunately, and fortunately, me becoming blind at 15 was the reason why all of the abuse stopped. For me, for my siblings, for everybody. That is why. So it took me basically being a sacrifice, my sight being sacrificed in order for the abuse to stop. So I look at it as a blessing, but of course that means that that hinders my life in the end because now I can't see. I wasn't being beat anymore, but now I can't see. So yeah, it stopped, but now it caused me to have to basically have a life-altering reality. Like it changed my life for me for the better. Because I sometimes, think about the person I would have ended up being if I hadn't become blind, due to the child abuse. I look at my siblings and the life they live and the things they've been through, and I can only imagine the person that I would have turned out to be because I was a very angry child. So because I couldn't hurt my mom, who was the person that was hurting me, I was hurting people at school. I was fighting, I was always in, and that was my way of expressing myself because I felt like I couldn't express how I felt to the person who was hurting me. So it came out in my behavior at school. I turned around and was bullied as a kid, and then I turned around and became the bully just because, I was tired of being bullied. Bullied at home, bullied at school. So you know what? You're gonna mistreat me, so I'm going to be the one now. New girl come to school. Oh, I don't like you. I want to fight you just for no reason. It's silly now, but at that time, I was a hurt child. And so making somebody else feel the way I was feeling, it didn't seem like there was nothing wrong with that for me. But it really changed my mindset when I became blind because I think that if I stayed and had never become blind, I probably would not have been as nice of a person as I am now. I'm socially conscious of the decisions that I make. I'm socially conscious of the things that I do. Like I think before I act. I really, I don't just do things just to do things. Like it made me really just reflect on what life could be if this hadn't happened to me. And I'm grateful that despite it all, I've come out of it. And it's made me become a good mom to my own child because I know what I've been through and I know I would never want to put him through what I went through. So I say all this to say, and I share all this to say that if you see a child being hurt, if you know a child being hurt, please reach out. Please, just find them a safe place. Take them in if you can. Just you don't know how much you caring about them can really help change their life for the better. Like there's just so many stories that you hear of children being, brutally killed. And a lot of it's their own parents. Their parents are stressed out, they're upset about being single parents or not having enough or, going through their own mental health issues or it's just a whole lot. that could be going on, and you just never know. And story after story after story of children being hurt and harmed when they could have been protected if someone had cared enough to pay attention. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit now. So since we are on the topic of children and child abuse and things like that, so it is also Autism Awareness or Autism Acceptance Month. And, me being a mom of a child with autism, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. And, being a mom with a child with autism, on top of my handling and dealing with my own disability, is definitely not easy. And so my journey with my son and finally getting his diagnosis has been a long 3-year journey. So he was officially diagnosed in October 2025 at 6 years old, but I've known and suspected literally since he was born, but really since he was about 3. So just like my life has not been easy, my son's life has not been easy either since the day he was born. So he came into this world 3 weeks early, so not considered, he was still considered full term, but the complications from me having to have him 3 weeks early that came along with not only my health, but his health impacted, just him from day one. So he was severely jaundiced. So he literally was jaundiced for almost 3 months, and that's unheard of for the most part. So on top of him, dealing with the whole jaundice, and they really didn't want to send him home from the hospital until, his numbers would look good enough for him to come home. But when he did come home, found out that he also had sleep apnea. So he was not able to sleep on his back as an infant. And if he did, he would choke on his own saliva. So, and he would also, of course, stop breathing in his sleep. So had to go through that and was constantly monitoring him. He had to wear like a heart monitor thing so that I could know, when he stopped breathing and, to check. So it was like those early days were just constantly me up and down and up and down and up and down. And then on top of that, I had no support. It was just me. I was still working full time. So, yes, dealing with being a brand new mom, I'm blind on top of that. I'm working full time and I'm a single mom, no support system, no one helping me. You can only imagine what that was like. But I got through it. And I was breastfeeding on top of that. So I was determined to breastfeed him, even though he couldn't latch just due to different complications. But I made sure I pumped for him and he got breast milk. So we got through, all of that. Then at about, it was about 6 months. No, I would say he was about 4 or 5 months when I noticed that, he wasn't developing normally, like at a quote unquote normal state that most babies are, doing, hitting certain milestones. And of course, they were like, oh no, every kid develops at a different age, which they're different levels, their own pace. I know all of that. So I wasn't like, too worried or anything or concerned. But when it started becoming 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, okay, something's wrong. This isn't normal. So I would take him to his pediatrician. I'm like, okay, he's not rolling over. He's not sitting up. He's not doing any of this. And I'm like, it's not that he's not trying. He just can't. He's trying and he's literally grunting and groaning and trying to force himself to do these things. And it's causing him discomfort. And they were like, oh no, it's just wait a couple of more months. And if he's still not doing it, then, we'll look into it. So 8 months turned into 9 months, then 10 months, and then 11 months. And I'm like, nope, he's still not doing it. And they're like, okay, so now we're gonna, evaluate him. So we went through the whole evaluation and I'm like, oh yeah, something, yeah, something's not right. So my son was born bow-legged, so he was severely bow-legged. And a lot of everything that he has or is going through is hereditary. And so it's all from his biological dad. Um, and I found that out later, of course, but another story for another time. But so they finally was like, yeah, something's wrong. Like, this isn't normal for him to not be hitting these milestones. He's not rolling over at 11 months old. He's not sitting up and he's 11-month old. Like, there's something wrong. So they finally, did the evaluation and like, okay, we're gonna put him in we're gonna have him to start wearing braces. So I'm like, okay, great. Like we're gonna get him walking because the fact that he wasn't rolling over or sitting up meant he wasn't gonna be walking either. So he started in braces at 14 months old. And so, this is all during COVID, of course. So he started off with a therapist. COVID hit, so everything became virtual. Now, me and my blind self don't know nothing about being a physical therapist, but I had no choice but to act as his physical therapist. So it was frustrating trying to help him learn how to walk, learn how to roll, learn how to crawl, all these things that he should have been doing because uh, all of this is I'm not trained for that. I didn't go to school to be a physical therapist, but you know what? I had to do it because I wanted my child to be successful. I wanted him to catch up to where he needed to be, so I did what I had to do. So his first therapist he had, we were doing the virtual physical therapy. And it annoyed the heck out of me because I felt like she wasn't really paying attention. I could hear her in there washing dishes, pots and pans, bang. And I'm like, well, how does she even know that I'm actually, doing this correctly if she's not paying attention? Like, I could be hurting him or something. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going by what she's telling me to do to help position him and help strengthen his legs and all of this, but she's in there doing her own thing. Like I went out and I had like all this different stuff I bought to try to help him climb, learn how to climb on things. Like our whole living room was like a mini physical therapy office or something because I went out and just was buying stuff, whatever I could do to help. Um, and we did that for a few months. And I finally was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I don't feel like he's making progress. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, he was making progress, but I felt like he wasn't making as much progress as I thought he should have been making if he was with someone who was professionally trained to do this. And doing the whole virtual thing was just not working for me. So I told her, I was like, I don't like this. I'm actually going to see if I can find someone who can work with him in person. I can't do this. I don't feel like he's doing what he should be doing because I am not knowledgeable in this. So thankfully I ended up finding him a physical therapist. And he worked with him until he started walking on his second birthday. And you would never know this child was delayed in walking. And so it went from 2 years old is when he finally started walking. And during all of this, like my son was very advanced in his language. Verbalization, his communication skills and stuff was always, very advanced because I never did the whole baby talk with him and all that. I've always spoken to him as if he was an adult. And so I noticed when he was about 2.5 years old that all of a sudden he started developing a stutter. And so I asked his therapist, I would talk to his pediatrician, and I'm like, I don't know if this is just it's just something, a one, two time thing. I said, he's been doing it and I haven't really, paid it much mind because, it could happen, But I said now it seems like it's getting more frequent. Like something is not right. He's going from speaking complete sentences to now struggling to get through one sentence without struggling. I'm like, something, it just doesn't seem right. So at 3 years old, I was like, I want to have him evaluated for a speech delay. And so they did that, and they were like, oh, well, yeah, he has a slight stutter, but you know what? It's normal. He'll just catch it back up. Like, don't worry about it. If things haven't gotten better in a couple of months, give us a call. So I'm like, okay, y'all know best. Y'all are the doctors. I'm just a first-time mom. I'm pretty sure y'all probably think that, I'm just jumping to conclusions about everything because I'm a first-time mom and I'm a blind mom on top of that. So, I waited like they told me. And of course, it only got worse. So I'm like, yeah, something's not right. Like, I need him to be evaluated. So this is when the autism evaluation first came into play. So I told him that I suspected that he was on the spectrum. And so he got a referral to do a autism evaluation. They did it. It was virtually, and they were like, "Oh no, he's not on the spectrum. He's doing this, he's doing that. He's fine. He just has ADHD." So I'm like, "Okay. I know this child. I see him every single day. I work with him every single day. It's something, no, he's just not ADHD." I'm like, okay, well, I'll take the diagnosis or whatever, and we'll go with that. Because, yeah, dude, my little dude was super hyper, so I knew definitely ADHD was part of it. But I'm like, no, there's something more than that. So he started pre-K, and I brought it up again about me suspecting that he was on the spectrum just because of more observations, more things that I noticed that he was having issues with. Like he potty trained at 4 years old, literally on his fourth birthday. Even though I had been potty training him since he was like 18 months old. But finally, at 4 years old, is when, yeah, he finally potty trained. So that was a great relief because that was a struggle. That was a struggle in itself. Um, so pre-K, they were like, oh no, we're gonna start him with behavioral therapy and all of this. So he saw a therapist for like a year and did absolutely nothing to help his behavior. A waste of time, a waste of money, waste of everything. So kindergarten, once again, I'm like, I want him evaluated. So I actually paid out of pocket to have him evaluated. They still came back, oh no, he's fine. Like I don't, yeah, ADHD. And I'm like, no, I want a second opinion. So kindergarten, his school did an evaluation. And they were like, based on everything I was saying, based on my answers to the questionnaires, based on everything like that, he was on the spectrum. But based on what the teacher was saying, he wasn't. So they went with what the teacher said. And I'm like, okay, once again, you guys are not paying attention. I'm like, well, the teacher has what, 25 other kids to, really pay attention to. Like I don't see her really being able to have enough time to dedicate to watching and observing what he's doing. So I'm not taking that, I'm taking it with a grain of salt. So once again, I'm like, okay, well, he something's going on. So he started, medication for the ADHD, all of that. Nothing changed as far as his behavior, nothing. So first grade comes, and I reached back out to his pediatrician. I was like, I've already had him evaluated twice, and both times they said no. I said, I want him evaluated again. And this time I want it in person. I don't want it to be a, 30-minute session or something. No, they need to spend time with him so that they can see what I see on a regular basis. He was like, okay, I'm going to put a referral in. You know your child, you know him best. So he put the referral in, got the call, set up the appointment, went to the evaluation, spoke to a psychologist who's finally gave him his diagnosis. Not a psychologist with a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree, but a PhD who specializes in diagnosing children with autism. And finally, at the age of 6, he received his official diagnosis. And the psychologist was just like, so how many times have you done this? I said, you are my third time. And she was like, nobody suspected. I said, no, they said he wasn't. She was like, I'm not trying to be rude or I'm not trying to be disrespectful. She was like, but it is very obvious that your child is on the spectrum. She's like, just in the time that I've observed with him and then interacted with him, it's definitely very obvious. And so it brought me joy to know that finally somebody was listening to me. But it was definitely very frustrating that it took 3 years of me having to push and advocate and not take no for an answer, that I know my child and I know, and no one wants anything to be wrong with their child. Nobody wants that, label or that stigma, but I'm not the type that's just going to sit here and ignore something just because I don't want it to be true. I'd rather get him the help that he needs, the resources that he needs, than to just bury my head in the sand and pretend like it doesn't exist, because it doesn't help him. It hurts him. And so ever since then, he's been getting ABA therapy, he's been getting speech therapy, he's been getting all the services that he should have had all along. And I'm happy about that. And he's improving. We've tweaked his medication and different things, and we're seeing great improvement in him. And, for those of you who don't know, autism is a spectrum. Just like blindness is a spectrum, there's some people who can have light perception, totally dark, totally blind, darkness, visual impairment. There's spectrums. And it affects everyone differently. Everyone who has autism doesn't exhibit the same symptoms. Like if you were to meet my son, you would just think he was a quote unquote neurotypical kid. But until you're really around him and get to engage with him, then you will see, especially when it comes to him engaging with his own peers. He prefers to be around adults. He doesn't really get along with other children his age. He doesn't do any of the obvious, autism stimming that some children do, like the flapping of the arms or the spinning in circles, running back, things like that. So he doesn't do any of those typical, stimming activity, but he does have a lot of the social, emotional, behavioral symptoms of autism. And during the autism evaluation, they also did a IQ test on him. And of course, I always known that his verbal communication skills have always been very advanced for his age, because it just has. He just has a severe stutter that sometimes impacts him communicating to where he just shuts down and doesn't want to talk anymore because he gets frustrated about stuttering. But based on the IQ test that they did on him at 6, and he's 7 now, he was at 117, ranking 87th percentile for his age. So that tells you, despite him having autism, which is basically considered, a lot of people say autism spectrum disorder, ASD, or they just say, autism, which is a developmental, social, and emotional, condition that impacts, their daily lives. Like it impacts them in many different ways. Some people who have autism have sensory processing issues. They may have, which my son does have auditory issues, so sounds bother him. Um, they also have, like I said, the stimming. Sometimes certain like textures bother them, certain taste, smells, so there's different things that come into play when dealing with someone who is on the spectrum. No two people are the same, even though they may have the same condition. Um, and it's a learning curve. It's something to learn. And autism is actually an umbrella condition, is what I like to call it, because you can have autism and also have other conditions connected. Like my son, he has separation anxiety disorder. He also has ADHD. He has ODD, and then he also has a PDA, which is a pathological demand avoidance. It's not, PDA is not a separate diagnosis per se, but it goes hand in hand with the autism diagnosis. And I've just learned all of this myself just from researching and learning so that I can find how I can better assist him and help him with the things that he struggles with. So that to help him be a more successful person, to help him to be able to integrate and connect with people on his level, and people that can understand him and won't jump to conclusions or jump to, just thinking the worst when they don't know him. So currently, I'm also getting my coaching certification to be an autism support coach. So during this process, I'm learning more about ways that I can not only help my own child, but also help other people who may be, on the spectrum, just live life more abundantly. Just like, having to learn how to live as a blind person takes a lot of work, a lot of, research, a lot of pros, cons, a lot of trials and errors. Having a child with autism spectrum disorder is not easy either. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of patience. It's a lot of communicating and finding ways how to communicate with them on his level. It's a lot of helping him to make or feel like he's making decisions for himself and not always being told what to do. So it's a lot, but I wouldn't trade who he is for anything in this world because he's a little person with lots of personality. He's definitely a laugh. Like he makes me laugh, he makes me smile. That's my little best friend. Like we do everything together. Sometimes I be wanting my space. But that I felt like God paired us together for a reason. Like he knew that my child needed someone like me to be his mom, so that he would know that he's loved and that he wouldn't have to go through what I went through as a child seeking the love and affection from a parent. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Um, I hope of those of you who may be dealing with a child or adult with autism, can find some guidance and some help just to know that you are not alone. It's a journey, but it's a journey worth traveling on because the person that you are on this journey with is worth it. Those of you who may be a survivor of child abuse, I hope you get some relief from this episode of hearing about someone else's journey and how I came through it, and just knowing that you are not alone. Like, you are here, you have community, you have people who care about you, and you can do this. So, guys, don't forget to visit the website at BFF Empowerment Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the blog to keep up to date with the latest and greatest on the podcast. Also, follow us on social media. We are on YouTube, Threads, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram at BFF Empowerment Podcast. If you would like to be a spotlight on the Women on the Rise segment of the BFF Empowerment Podcast, send me an interest email to bffempowerment@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, if you were empowered or inspired by this episode, be sure to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform of choice to help others discover their next favorite women's empowerment podcast. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for listening.